Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Smoko podcast. My name is Alexis Armstrong, your host. Nice to meet you. The Smoko podcast is a place to celebrate and highlight women, trans women, and non binary folk working within STEM and trade occupations. So please tune in, take a break, and join us. We are on Smoko. Today, we are extremely lucky to be joined by the lovely Bethany Mercia or Beth Mercia. You may know her from Chicken Chippy Builds. She's a carpenter out of Blue Mountains, kind of outside of Sydney. And we're going to talk about today about her experience as a carpenter, as an apprentice, and now a tradesperson. We're going to talk about her experience within the construction industry as a carpenter. We're going to talk about her fantastic achievement of just winning the HIA Apprentice of the Year, which is a huge, huge deal. So we're going to talk a little bit about that accomplishment and that experience. And then we're going to talk a lot about sustainability within the construction industry because she works for Blue Eco Homes, and she specializes in something called passive builds. So, we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability and construction as well. And so, I'm so excited to get into all of these topics. And Beth, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me.
It's honestly, it's an honor, and like it was so cool doing my research for you and trying to like put together your questions today. And one of the things that stood out the most that I was just like, what? I had no idea that this is where we were going to start. But I read that you started actually in film and TV, specializing in makeup. And I was wondering if you could talk about how you went from makeup and in film industry to becoming a chippy and carpenter.
Yeah, for sure. So I left school end of year 10. I just wasn't for me. And I was obsessed with the idea of working in film. And I actually spent 3 years working as a makeup artist and qualified as a hairdresser. And I absolutely adored it and everything about it. And at the time, so towards the end of these 3 years, I was actually working as a restaurant manager. I was
Mm.
also working in the makeup space, doing a lot of weddings, also at the same time studying to become a hairdresser,
Oh my
and
goodness.
also working casually as a laborer for my parents.
Oh my goodness.
Because why not just absolutely cram all of my time and not do anything else? And I kind of got a little bit over the sporadic nature of the makeup industry. Like, I adore it and it's
Mm.
always going to have a huge place in my heart, but I wanted something a bit more stable. And I actually found that the time I spent on site working with the boys, working with Blue Eco, was so
Mm.
much more rewarding, and just my general enjoyment was so huge. And like, I grew up my entire life following my dad around
Mhm.
on site. So it was something that has always been a part of me. And, as I was getting towards this whole, I just want a break. I want something stable. I want to give back. And I
Mhm.
adored what my parents were doing within
Aw.
the industry.
Mhm.
And so one day I came home and I was like,
I'm gonna do it.
I talked to my parents. I was like, what would you think about me starting a full time apprenticeship? And they were just straight away, instantly like, yep, let's go. And yeah, I kind of just never looked back from there. It was just
Mm.
meant to be.
I love that. No, I think that's so beautiful, and, like, I can't wait to talk a little bit about, like, the family nature of your business and your work because I think that's, like, beautiful in itself. I think, like, that's such a cool part of your story, but I love that kinda story of being, like, maybe loving the art of makeup and loving the actual practice, but maybe not the environment of the industry, and I love that
Yeah,
you found this and it felt like you and it was, like, an instant connection. That's pretty special.
100%. And also, like, makeup and carpentry obviously don't go hand in hand, but I found that because of that detailed work and time that I put into makeup, it's actually like giving me the ability to be more detailed and be more stable with my hands, and I guess that foresight of how things are going to work. So, and even the busy nature of the
Mhm.
makeup industry definitely helped me with time management, and working with people who are busy and under
Yeah.
stress definitely helped me when moving into the construction space.
I could imagine that actually them being, like, very similar. Like, yeah, you think, like, on paper, like, night and day, but, like, it is very, like, specialized, fine detail, like, minute, tiny, tiny work that has to be, like, perfect, perfectly crafted, and yeah, you're right, like, it's a chaotic film set that everything has to be, like, go, go, go,
Yeah,
probably very similar to a construction site. That's really cool, actually.
yeah. There's definitely a big change, but and I still pull out my makeup brushes, dress up for award nights. I still casually, every now and again do a wedding.
Mm,
And all my friends obviously adore the fact that I can do their makeup. So, it's still a big part of my life and kind of,
mhm.
it's almost a hobby now, but it's still something that has forever been me and helped me get to where I am today. So,
Oh, that's
life's a
really
journey.
cool. Yeah, totally. Like you never know where you're going to end up, and like that's a beautiful thing that like that skill set is something that you can still use and like brought you here. And another aspect of that story when you're talking about it is I think it was within the same interview you said a really cute phrase that you said that you had sawdust in your veins and I was like, "Oh my goodness." And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about like how you grew up because your dad was always on site and like it's his business, it's him and your mom's business and like that was your childhood. And I was wondering if you could kind of speak to you growing up and any lessons learned from your childhood which you think like really set you up for a career as a chippy now.
So growing up, so I have two older siblings. So I have a brother and
Mm,
sister, and as a family, we spent a lot of time camping. We spent a lot of time bushwalking. We basically grew up camping,
in the woods.
um, and I was constantly following my dad around site. Like, I just adored it. I, was helping. Definitely wasn't, but there are so many photos of me just hanging around site. We also like recently found a photo of me at like 3 years old trying to climb a ladder. So it's always been something I want to do. But we also grew up as we were all scouts, so
Mm,
that was a big part of our lives. And again, tied in with camping, but there was a lot of practical skill in that. So obviously, a lot of team building, a lot of life skill, a lot of working with your hands. So I learned to
mhm.
use hand tools pretty young. Pretty sure I could swing a hammer before I could walk. And I used to pull sickies from school so I could go to work with dad just to hang out. I love it. I've definitely always been a dad's girl, and that's actually where Chicken Chippy comes from because my entire life he's called me Chicken.
Aw.
So I guess when I say I had sawdust in my veins, it's kind of just always been such a fundamental part of my life. Like as a family, it's
Mhm.
the sustainability, building in general, has always been quite a core part of all of our lives. Like my brother and sister have worked little bits within our company as well. Obviously, it wasn't for them, but we've all just had such a passion for what we do. And because we grew up in the Blue Mountains, we've always been very like eco friendly. And so once we moved into that sustainable building, everything just fell into place. And it's always been something that has stuck with our family's core values. And working with my parents, it's, there's good and bad days. There's always good and bad days with
Yeah,
anyone.
totally.
Um, but it's just brought us so much closer together and has definitely enriched the business. And it was always a joke that I was going to end up running Blue Eco and that I was
Mm.
going to be a builder from very young.
This is you. Yeah, this is part of your
Exactly.
business.
And
Yeah.
which is definitely why, like, when I came home and was like, Dad, can I start an apprenticeship? His face lit up so quickly.
Aw.
He basically ran to the local tool shop, bought me a full kit. He was just absolutely ecstatic. Like working with them, they're just so proud, and
Mm.
like I am working towards eventually taking over, and like it just gives me so much pride that watching them build this business and what they're doing within the industry. It's just to be able to
Yeah.
be a part of that. It's just something that and everyone always is a bit wary of working with family, and like yeah, we've had rough patches, but
Totally.
it happen.
Yeah.
But we just make a really good team, and like I adore that, and it's a very wholesome experience, I
Mhm.
guess.
It seems wholesome, like, from your guys' website, from everything, like, you can tell that, like, this is something that you guys love. You can tell that it's your family values. Like, it feels like it's reading almost like a welcome to the family kind of book or, like, welcome to the cabin. Like, it doesn't even seem like a business. Like, it seems very personal, very homey, very, very wholesome,
Yeah.
very, very cute. I love it.
Definitely, and that's very much it's always reflected within our clients as well, because our clients are usually families,
Mm,
and even like they always tend to have the same values as us. We get along really
mm,
well because you're right, like we show off our family value and that
mhm.
we are a family business, and it's such a welcoming experience for like our team and our clients because like
It's
we
personal. Yeah, it seems
Exactly.
very
We
personal. Yeah, it
definitely, definitely.
yeah. I love that answer, and I love that it was, like, sawdust is definitely in your veins, and, like, I think that's so cute that that was kind of the family joke to be like, "Yeah, you're gonna take over Eco
Yep.
Blue," and then you're like, "Yeah, okay, I probably am." Like, this is I'm gonna join the trade, this is for me, like, that's it's a beautiful full circle moment, and, like, I think that you nailed it with that answer of being like, "Yeah, like, this is just something that I've always loved, I've always admired my parents. I think, like, admiration for your dad definitely came through of being like, "Yeah, I've always been a hero and wanna be like him, and this is kind of an idol of work towards." And I
Yep.
don't know, I think that's so beautiful. Like, I'm a little biased because I'm also part of a family-run business, and it's, like, me and my dad that are running this business, so, like, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like, amazing." I think it's beautiful, and I resonate with it, but I think that's so freaking stunning, Beth. I was wondering if we could like talk a little bit before we get too far down the pathway that people might be a little bit confused. I was wondering, could you define your guys' business? And I know your specialty is passive homes. I was wondering if we could maybe like take a moment to define passive homes as well. And then if we could talk about like the necessity of like why is passive homes and sustainability. You mentioned that like within the Blue Mountains, eco-friendliness and like being really environmentally conscious, that's kind of part of the area. Why that's such a necessity in a place like the Blue Mountains because it's a World Heritage area. So a little bit about like what you guys do if you could describe your business, passive homes, and then like the necessity of it in terms of your area and being eco-friendly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Obviously, as we just talked about, Blue Eco Homes is a family business. We've been operating as Blue Eco for 20 years this year.
Oh my God,
Um,
that's
it's
huge.
a huge achievement, I guess, for us.
Mhm.
And prior to that, my dad had his own company before we became Blue Eco. One of our goals and passions is obviously sustainability. We pride ourselves on our high standard of quality, ensuring that the homes we're giving to and handing over to clients are beneficial for their health, their comfort, beneficial to the environment, and we're always conscious of like even when we're building how we're impacting the surrounding area. Most of our jobs we end up having to fence off trees because they're protected, and we just have so much pride in what we're achieving,
Mhm.
because we are leaders in the sustainability space of the industry. And like touching on that, in 2019 we built our first passive house, and it actually tied first with another company as the first passive house built in Australia.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and so obviously a huge achievement for our company, but also
Mhm.
the Australian.
Australia. Yeah, totally.
Um, and recently we found out that that passive house we built to a flame zone standard, which is obviously it's a big part in the mountains is
Yeah.
fire
Fire
safety.
retention. Yeah.
But we actually built the first flame zone passive house in the world.
Wow.
So that's quite a huge achievement for
Oh
us,
my
and
goodness.
like we're very praised from our clients and all of that. But even within the industry itself, we pride ourselves on the award achievements that we receive.
Mhm.
So earlier
There
this
was
year,
loads. Yeah, when I was
oh,
reading it, it was like achievement after achievement. Like that page was just like I was
oh,
like, "Oh my goodness, you guys have
like
done like fantastic." Yeah.
every year I have to add another award shelf to our wall. Like, thank God it's load bearing, because otherwise I don't know if it was going to hold up. But earlier this year, we took home HIA's Green Smart Sustainability Home of the Year, which was huge because it's a national achievement. And one of our biggest prides is taking home New South Wales Professional Small Builder for the 5th year in a row this year.
Amazing.
Really hoping we can take home national. It's just being recognised as an award-winning business.
Oh,
Um,
it's huge.
it's massive for us, and we
Mhm.
really pride ourselves on showing that we are building what we believe in and what we say we are, and building it to a standard that is award
Mhm.
winning is just
It's the right thing
it's an
to
incredible
do.
feeling.
Yeah, it's like it's moving the industry in the right direction in terms of sustainability. Beth, in order to make something a passive home, what does that actually entail? Like what do you have to do to be like this qualifies as a passive home? And is
Yeah,
it sounds like most homes are not passive. It sounds like all other builds are active homes. And maybe what's the difference there?
it's a European style of build, and they've been building, like, it's their standard over there. Naturally, Australia is 10 years behind.
So is
So,
Canada, it's fine.
you know, but to build a passive house, there are 5 main principles. So, air tightness is the main one.
Okay.
So, in a standard house, you get about 15 air changes per hour. So, essentially, if you're heating a room for an hour, that air has changed 15 times, which is where we see a lot of like price going up.
Mhm.
And in a passive house, you have to reach a zero point 0.6 air changes per hour, which is very small. And you have to, so you do a thing called a blower door test to work out what that reading is. And to qualify it as a passive house, it has to reach that number. And so, one of the main questions everyone asks me when I say a house is airtight is, can I breathe? And yes, you can breathe in a passive house,
So a
which
vacuum. Yeah.
exactly, which then brings me to the one of the second points, which is a heat ventilation system. So essentially, it runs 24/7. It brings fresh air in, filters it, takes out humidity, and adjusts the temperature of it. It's exhausting at the same time, so you're continuously getting fresh air. And this is why, like, the HRV is definitely, like, it's one of the components that keeps a house, like, keeps a passive house between like 20 to 24
Mm.
degrees year round, which is why essentially you don't need aircon or heating. Obviously, we still do put those in because
Why
Australia's
not? Just
climate is
think
just
yeah.
very unpredictable. But even in that note, if it's hot, you only need the aircon on for like half hour, and it's cooled the house completely.
Wow.
And one
That's
of the
different.
most insane things is, so the first passive house we built, we could technically heat the whole house with one tea light candle,
Oh my goodness.
which
That's
is, it's just
insane.
such a crazy concept. um,
As a
and then
Canadian,
one of the
I can't even wrap my mind around that. Like, that
that
sounds that's bizarre. That's
it's
crazy.
it's just, it's such, like, every time I hear it or talk about it, I'm like,
No
it just
way.
feels fake, but like it's just how it is. And then the third point is high performing windows. We install triple glazed, and that's very dependent on where in the mountains we're building, because obviously if we're lower down, you can get away with double glazed windows, but coming up higher, you want triple glazed. And the importance of these windows is also that they're made out of like PVC instead of metal,
Mm.
which is actually like the fourth point, which is thermal bridges, because it's so important that within a passive house you're not creating gateways for cold air to get in. So that's why we
Mm.
don't use aluminium windows, and
Oh, wow. No
um,
metal.
even even
Yeah.
concreting, it has to be insulated to, because you don't want that cold air coming up, because it creates
Mhm.
cold spots, and cold spots create mold. Like, and obviously, we do have to have structural steel, but
Mhm.
we put those things in place to ensure that it's not running through the house and creating these cold spots. And then our fifth point is high performing insulation. So it's
Mm.
crucial that we have good insulation. And like that's a pretty staple thing in all houses, but especially in a passive house, because you're essentially creating your own climate within these houses. Like, it's a crucial part of it. And to make a passive house work, there's a lot of pre-planning, there's a lot of detail,
Mhm.
and you need all of these components to work cohesively to create such an energy efficient house. But yeah, so it's a phenomenal practice, and they are starting to become, like, more builders in Australia are definitely starting to take on this concept. It
Mm.
is quite slow,
Very
but
different. Yeah.
it's because it is a completely different way of building compared to traditional builds. There's so many different and more, like, there's just a lot more thought that has to go into it, a lot more
Mhm.
pre-planning. It's learning to work with new materials.
Mm.
Yeah, essentially that is a passive house. I forgot the last question that you asked.
Well, I think you already kinda nailed it of, like,
Okay.
of the importance of it within this area, but it sounds like this area is also just, like, very longevity focused because it's a heritage house. Like, I feel like, yes, it takes, like, a long time to build these things and lots of planning, but it sounds like they kinda are self-sustaining and more long-term longevity of a house than compared to, like, a new build.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
That's really cool. Like, what a wonderful way to build and, like, what a fundamentally different thing to
It
build that home.
it's very and explaining it to other builders, like it's one of our biggest things that we do at Blueco is educating. And some of the builders you talk to, they just it is a concept that takes a little bit to wrap around, but consistently is the how am I meant to breathe in this house? And it's like, okay, I get it, but I promise, eventually we'll get there, but
Mm.
baby steps, baby steps.
It's yeah, it's hard being the first, right? Like, you guys are on, like, the cutting edge of building in Australia,
Yeah,
and, like, your awards prove it, but, like, yeah, that definitely it's hard being, like, the only people 10 years ahead or 5 years ahead to be like, "Yeah, trust me, guys, this is gonna be big, like, just, like, stay with us, like, please, it's okay, you can breathe in the air." I didn't realize it was so air focused and, like, temperature control focused. I had
yeah,
no idea that that was the main consistent of a passive home, but it makes sense with energy. It does
yeah,
make
yeah,
sense.
definitely.
Beth, I know we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability at the end, but I was wondering if we could take a little intermission and just geek out a little bit about your incredible win and just speak a little bit about HIA, which is the Housing Industry Association. And you just won an amazing, amazing award, and congratulations times a million. You won the Apprentice of the Year in Australia, which is mind-boggling. I was wondering if you could speak to that experience. I'm sure it was mind-boggling, and then the importance of that accomplishment and kind of like what it meant to you to win the HIA Apprentice of the Year.
It was mind-boggling. When they said my name, I legitimately went into shock. It was just absolutely,
Frozen. Yeah.
yeah, went
Yeah.
up on stage, was like, "Oh, whoa." Like, obviously the whole time I
Aw.
was like, "Hope I win." Yeah, and then it happened and I was like, "Oh, oh, wow. Okay." It was just incredible to be recognized at such a high level. To be like Australia's best was just it's such an insane concept to me still. And I was just so proud when I found out I was actually the first female to ever win this award at
Oh,
the
wow.
HIA.
That's huge.
It really made me reflect on how much I adore the industry, how much I adore what I do, how much I
Mm.
love my team. It was really gratifying to know that all of the hard work I've put into this industry, pushing through all of the barriers that come with being a non traditional in a male dominated trade. I never imagined, like when I started my apprenticeship, I never imagined any of this.
No, of course not. You don't imagine to be like one day, like very soon in a couple years, all of Australia is going to give me the title of like the best. Like obviously that's like a shower dream of like accepting that speech. But of course you don't expect it. Like that's an amazing again mind-boggling in shock experience and just like congratulations. That's crazy that you're also the first woman to do it. I didn't realize that as well.
Yeah.
Apprenticeship is, like, known to be so difficult in general, like, just, like, full stop, apprenticeship is known to be really, really hard, and it's a couple years of just, like, grind, and then to be a non-traditional within a male-dominated environment makes it even harder, and then to have all that hard work pay off in such, like, a big, momentous event and, like, for it also to be a shock, like, I didn't realize that they, like, do a full award ceremony that you're nominated, but you don't know. I thought it was kind of one of those that you know a little bit beforehand that you're gonna win, like, for that to be that shock in that moment, like, that's a pretty special thing.
It
I love
was
it.
it was hugely, hugely special to me.
I wanted to speak a little bit about your acceptance speech because I thought that was really beautiful and that resonated with me a lot is when you dedicated your award to non-traditionals within the construction industry. And I was wondering what if you could kind of like speak to why that dedication meant so much to you and why it was so important to dedicate it to other people and other non-traditionals within the industry. And then what does this kind of experience because like I'm sure your life changed fundamentally since then, and, like, what does this distinction mean to you in terms of, like, representation and women in construction?
So I spend a lot of time talking at schools, talking to
Mm,
not only women, but to men as well. So I spend a lot of time already encouraging non-traditionals that this is like take up space. You're allowed to be
mhm,
here. And it's such an important part of what I do.
mm,
And the reason I wanted to dedicate it to non-traditionals was mainly because I wanted to show them what they can achieve within the industry and give hope, I guess,
mm,
because it is a difficult industry. Like apprenticeships are hard, as you said,
mhm,
and it's scary. Like I I grew up in construction. I was still intimidated and
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah, you're like you're king of the castle being like, "I know that I'm gonna work for Blue Eco," and even then
Yeah.
it's terrifying. Totally.
And I guess I just really wanted to point out and appreciate all of the women and non-traditionals that want to enter this space and really show them that hard work pays off, and if they want to do it, they
They
can,
can.
and they can achieve big
The
things, and
best.
they can do it.
Yeah.
And like it's, yeah, inspiring the next generation is just, and even not even just the next generation, even inspiring mature age apprentices and
Or
um
colleagues. Like, I would be jazzed up seeing, like, another woman win it. Like, it doesn't matter if it's, like, a different generation or, like, same generation or younger. Like, it's inspiring to see a non-traditional win. Like, it's you're like, "Yeah, one of us made it." It's
yeah.
huge. It's huge in terms of representation.
And definitely after winning it, I've been asked on podcasts, I've done a lot of
Mhm.
talks with HIA. I'm actually now working with the book The House She Built as one of
Oh,
their
amazing.
ambassadors.
That's awesome.
And so again, like that's such a huge thing to me because like I think the idea of that book is so amazing. Being a
Mhm.
part of it is huge. And so it definitely has boosted me and given me a little bit more of a pedestal to continue to inspire and continue to share the message, and not only to women but to men within the
Yeah,
industry, because we've got to change the industry to make it more accepting, obviously not just for women but
for
for
everybody.
non-traditionals, for everyone. It should be a nice industry. I definitely, it's given me a lot of room to talk to both sides, and I guess it's also just a little bit of me is like, haha, I
Yeah,
showed all of
I
you.
did it. Yeah, totally.
Um, because I did do my apprenticeship and I did have multiple conflicts. It was never within my team. My team is lovely, but I've spent
Mhm.
my whole apprenticeship being told, sexist things.
The
Um,
stereotypical of, like, you don't deserve to be here, and then you get that award, and you're like, "I'm already here, I deserve it in fucking spades, like, watch me
yeah,
now." Like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So a little bit of me is like, he. Um, but yeah, it's definitely given me the opportunity to speak, I guess, more and louder, and also now having this title under me, it shows the experience that I have,
Mhm.
and it shows that I am good at my job. It's definitely allowed me to continue inspiring, which is just such a core part of what I do.
No, it's so beautiful. Like it's beautiful that it gives you kind of credibility a little bit. Not that you need it, but in terms of like sexist people and like people that will make it challenging, it's nice that you have that credential behind you to be like, okay, well, try to challenge me now. Like it's harder to challenge the HIA than it is to challenge me as an individual. So like it gives you a little bit of grit. And then it gives, I think, because it gives you grit, it gives the entire community grit. And I think it gives the younger generation grit and something to aspire to as well. So like I think that's probably going to be a crazy thing in the next year if it hasn't happened already that like young girls especially with the book is probably going to come up and like young
Yeah,
kids to be like, oh, I want to be like you and I want to be like Beth. Like I'm sure you're going to have a moment that you're just going to be like crying at the Home Depot being like, oh my goodness, this little girl came up to me and like it's going to be probably like magical for the next generation.
yeah, I'm so excited.
I love it. I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about I know we've talked about like what makes a passive home, but we've talked a little bit about like sustainable building practices and I was wondering if we could like dive in there and be a little bit nerdy about like
Yeah.
what's the what's the difference between like a sustainable building practice and then like a traditional build and like what makes it sustainable? Is it materials? Is it like a fundamental change to design? Like what goes into making something sustainable versus traditional?
So, so I've written down a heap of notes.
Love it.
Um, a lot of these. So I've written principles off,
Mm,
you know, obviously what I know within our business.
mhm.
So there's a lot of design philosophy, integrating environmental considerations. So
Cool.
this is, looking at the lifestyle of the area and of the job itself. So is it a knockdown rebuild? How are we going to manage the waste of that? Is there a better way we can do this? Also looking at, how we can, protect the environment,
Mhm.
also having a holistic approach to the build itself. So considering energy efficiency, water conservation, site selection, waste reduction, and
Got it.
the indoor environmental quality. And then obviously a big part is energy efficiency and renewable energy. So with like what we call passive design is like maximizing natural lighting, ventilation, higher
Cool.
insulation, and reducing the need for heating and cooling, and also looking at renewable energy integration. So, in regards to solar panels, wind turbines, and just generally trying to minimize reliance on non renewable resources because, like, it's just
Mhm.
such a crucial element. And then, obviously, material selection and resource efficiency is drastically important. So, looking at low impact materials that, are recycled, locally sourced, and looking at materials with low embodied energy. And then obviously the importance of reducing your waste,
Oh my goodness, you guys
recycling,
do
recy-
everything. Like it's like
oh,
complete holistic blueprint at like from like the very beginning raw material to like probably the very end recycle of the home.
like we live and breathe it. And then also, obviously water conservation.
Mm.
So integrating not only water tanks, but water saving fixtures. So like faucets, harvesting rainwater, like looking at efficient irrigation practices to like reduce water consumption. And even little things like in regards to energy and stuff, it's like little practices like don't do your washing at night because your
Mhm.
solar panels,
Potentially
there's
or
no sun.
offer like there's nothing. Yeah, exactly. You got nothing.
Yeah. And then also things like obviously improved air quality, things like, the ventilation systems, using low emission materials. Like we do Vox checks and like we check toxicology
Mm.
of materials
It's
so
like
that we're not.
holistic like health. Like it's like health and wellness for a person, but it's also environmental health and like ecological impact in the community. Like it sounds
Exactly.
pretty
Like
full run.
100%. And one of our big things is like occupant comfort. Obviously it's great to have a gorgeous home and
Yeah.
an energy efficient one, but you want to make sure it's still comfortable. So looking at things like natural light, noise reduction, and making it an ergonomical space, and then also ensuring that there is a life cycle. Like you
Mm.
want the house to last, and looking at how it's going to last within the environment. So if you're in a bushfire zone,
Mm.
depending on your fire rating, building to that. And if you're in a cold area, building to that. It's the same as if you're near the beach, you've got to use certain materials, so it's not going
A
to.
road or like yeah.
Yeah. Um, there are a lot of differences to a standard build. Like when we talk sustainability, a lot of people go, "Oh, I'll slap some solar panels on and I've done it." But like within ours, there are a lot of different
Mhm.
principles. There are a lot of different considerations, and it does seem quite confronting, but
Yeah.
it's a
Confronting's
lot
a
of
good word. Yeah, it's a lot on the paper of being like, okay, there's a lot of things here that I have to checklist and go through. Yes, confronting is a good word.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then obviously, like within that space, there is quite a lot of improvement within the industry itself. Like it's starting to be talked about a lot more. Our new NCC, so the National Construction Code, is making changes.
Hmm.
So recently, they've just brought in energy efficient provisions, so including like minimum energy performance requirements, looking at like energy efficient lighting systems.
That's probably
Um,
gonna increase too. Like I feel like you guys again like cutting edge. Like you guys are probably a little bit ahead of policy and probably ahead of like government, and that's gonna come in the next like 5, 10 years. Catch up.
100%. And like it's a big part of what we're like Blue Eco's hoping for, that one day passive house will be the Australian standard. So we're definitely hoping for that. And it is becoming more talked about. The industry knows that we've got to start doing better. And obviously, with things like the new NCC coming in, people are almost being forced to start building better. But
Mhm.
even clients and just the general population knows and is seeking out healthier housing because obviously they want the environmental side of it, but they also want houses that aren't moldy.
Totally. Yeah. They wanted
And
them safe for themselves and their family, as anyone would, right? Like that makes
well,
total sense. Yeah.
exactly. We're getting new technologies.
Mhm.
We're looking at the idea of, ensuring houses are built with resilience. There is a bigger emphasis on well-being. So
Mm.
obviously the health impacts of houses. There's the whole climate change is getting worse and we need to build for the extreme weather changes. But also, I just think people and like the industry, it's struggling to change because a lot of people have built the same way for years. They don't want to change. And like, I get that. Like,
Mhm.
change is hard. Um, but we are changing minds slowly, and not just Blue Eco, but the
How's
industry
construction
itself.
industry in general, right? I loved asking about it because I think it's something that people really wanna learn about, especially about, like, sustainability and in housing, and I know that's Canada has a bunch of really, really old, inefficient houses, and then, like, it's very common. I lived in a house that, like, the wind would go right through all of your windows, and it was just
Yeah.
like you were blasting heat, and it was like so it's a conversation kind of like in our northern climate a lot, and, like, I know a lot of people would be really interested in being like, "Okay, how do you make it more sustainable and more efficient?" Because I do think that culture is very similar to Australia, that I feel like, especially in BC, like, we're very eco-friendly, but we do live in a northern climate with, like, single pane glass and, like, an oil heater. So, like, I
Yeah.
would love if this wasn't the setup. I would love if, like, I lived in a passive home. So it's really interesting to learn more, but it's also really beautiful to see how passionate you are with it and to see how much joy you get from your career and how wholesome, again, I think bringing back to that word with your family firm and, like, working with your dad and, like, sawdust in your veins, just the fact that this is, like, a fated kinda meant to be. And then maybe to end on that of being like, you have so much confidence and such an ability to be loud and to speak your mind, which is so gorgeous. And like, if someone could bottle that, how did that happen? Like, last one, it'd be like, if someone is going to walk away to be like, I'm going to take that Beth mentality and I'm going to bring it to my job and into my world, how do I bottle that up? What do I need to do?
Um, Look, I think a big part of it is just it's easier said than done, but just
Mm,
genuinely believe in yourself. And like speaking on, obviously different experiences. Like I'm aware that I had it a little bit easier because I, went into my parents' company, and so I can't speak for the women that are trying and being knocked back. But I think if I was to give advice, it's just you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to know your self worth. You've got to
mm,
know that you have just as much right as anyone else on that site. Like if you want to do it, do it. Like the thing is you may start it and you don't like it. Okay,
yeah,
like I tell
that's
the same
okay.
thing to I tell the same thing to all the males. Like you can try it, and if you don't like it, then like that's fine. But
Yeah.
you don't know until you don't try. And
Mm,
like when I started, I had no confidence. I was very intimidated, and obviously, very early on in my apprenticeship, it was getting thrown around like, haha, like not haha, but like you're the boss's kid, blah blah blah.
mhm.
You're gonna become, it
It's
just
pressure and it's like a lot it's very nerve-wracking. I would be really, like, intimidated by that for sure.
definitely.
Mhm,
And like a lot of it was like I spent a lot of time trying to prove myself. And I think one of the big
mhm,
things that I tell a lot of high schoolers is particularly women is it'll feel like you need to run
mhm.
twice as fast as
Yeah.
everyone. And because I did the same, but I
Mhm,
burnt myself out. And like it does feel like you need to work as just as hard. You need to be better and you need to carry the same weight. You don't need to do that. And like it's hard. It's easier said than done. I did it. and
I did it
I
too.
got
Like, it took time. I don't know when I stopped doing it, but I did the exact same thing.
and like it's a
Yeah.
hard, because when you're up against like when especially when, women are being knocked back because, they have
Mhm,
a female name and aren't even getting a chance. Like it is harder to go on site and like it seems like if you're for me, when I was on site, if I was doing the same level of work as a male apprentice, I felt like I was doing less work.
mhm,
If for like no apparent reason. I was doing the exact same amount of work, but it just felt like I was doing less. And
mhm,
so naturally I was like, I need to do more. But
mhm,
I think knowing that you don't have to, and like and we said it before, an apprenticeship is hard anyway. So there's no
mhm.
point burning
Making it
yourself
harder
out
for
even
yourself.
more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the thing is I burnt myself out, and that was one of the times that I almost threw in the towel because I was like, this
Mm,
is too hard. But in reality, it was just me making it harder for myself. You just got to believe in yourself. And find other women in, like, find mentors. There are so many lady tradie groups. There are so many resources for non-traditionals.
Mhm.
there's so much information, there's support out there. So, like, find those people, like, listen to podcasts like this,
Thank you.
like, uh like, listen to people who have done it. And it's that reason I dedicated that award, because I wanted
Mhm.
to show that you can. And I think the biggest thing is just, like, don't let anyone tell you you can't do it,
Mm.
because you will always be able to do what you want to. Like, it may take time, but you're just as capable as any other male apprentice walking on that site. And you deserve to take up space. And there is no reason that you don't deserve to be there. And
Mhm.
I think it's just so important that we support other women. Like, women supporting women is so important.
It is,
Um,
yeah. It's
and
so
just
empowering. It's very empowering. Mhm.
exactly, exactly. And yeah, I think that is just, it's one of the things that got me through, is teaching myself to do hard things
Mhm.
and just pushing through.
Pushing through, teaching yourself how to do hard things, but also, like, giving yourself a little bit of some grace and being like, "Okay, like, hard things is the exact same as what the guy is doing, not more." And,
Yeah.
like, maybe just relaxing a little bit, not feeling like you have to overcompensate, like, just being like, "Yes, my existence is just as valid in this space." And Beth, thank you so much. Like, thank you for kind of walking through apprenticeship and like community and outreach and non-traditionals, but also thank you for like diving into the specifics of sustainability and passive houses and just kind of like the future of sustainability. I think, like I've said it a million times during this interview, but I feel like you guys are onto something that's probably gonna take the rest of us like 10 years to catch up to. So it's just pretty beautiful to learn more. So thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Like, I love being able to talk about these
Mm.
things. And yeah, no, just thank you so much. And I am so excited for the workwear to be launched. I
Thank
said it to
you.
you earlier. I love and adore Peggy, which is
Uh,
your grandma, if I'm correct.
yes, it's my 99-year-old grandmother who I'm obsessed with. So like whenever anyone's like, "Oh, I really love Peggy." I'm like, "Yeah, me too, man. I am her like number one fangirl." So thank you.
Ev-
That's really kind.
anytime there's a post, I'm like, yep, story. Yep, straight up there. I just, I just brings me so much joy every time I see
Oh.
her. She just makes me so happy.
Oh, thank you. That makes me so honestly, like, I'll tell her that and her reaction will be, "Oh my goodness, that gal." She'll probably either say gal or, "Oh, that toots. That's so nice." Because she's so like she speaks like she's from like the 1930s. So I'll tell her, I'll send you a little note when I tell her. She'll love that. Thank you very
Oh
much. That's very
no,
sweet.
oh,
No, I
no, thank you so
appreciate
much for
that.
having me.
Oh, this was awesome. And like, please, I will definitely send you so many messages and like probably ask you so many questions about
Oh,
sustainable
anytime,
housing and like and
anytime.
what's going on with this. And like,
Happy to nerd out anytime.
okay, I'll send you all of my nerd up questions. Thank you again, Beth, for coming on the show. I just appreciate it immensely. And for those guys listening, thank you. This is the Smoko podcast. We will see you next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And ta ta for now, as Peggy would say.